Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio.
Hello and happy Friday. I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
And I'm Holly Fry.
We talked about soap this week.
Yeah, we did.
Here's a little backstory for why I had it on my list. When Holly and I first joined the podcast, we were moving from another podcast that we'd worked on together, had a totally different focus. And I tried to line myself up some initial starting episodes that I already had more background familiarity with to make this transitional process hopefully easier so that I could have a sort of learning by doing of how to research and write these episodes with some stuff that I already had some foundational knowledge in to make it a little easier. And one of those topics was soap, because one of my previous jobs was writing for a company that sold cleaning and sanitation products. And I wrote like product literature. I wrote newsletters for the businesses that we did business with. So I already had knowledge of various things related to soap and saponification and how soap was made, and that story about the animal sacrifices being burned and washed down the mountain, all of that. And then part of it was like, is anybody else interested in this, in the aspects of it that I find interesting? I don't really know. And then part of it was just, over time, I didn't feel like I quite needed the training wheel of things I already felt like I could almost write off the top of my head. And I never got around to it. But then we got a request for it. So great. Bring it back. Relearn stuff that I have forgotten at this point, more than 20 years since I had that job.
Yeah. We talked about saponification a lot in the episode we did on the lady who turned to soap.
Oh, yeah, which I forgot. I have not re-listened to that. And I remember doing the episode, but like the details of it are not in my brain.
Yeah. And I, of course, can't think about soap without thinking about Fight Club a lot.
Oh, yeah. I also thought about Fight Club a lot and about how to make soap. We must first render fat.
Yeah. Which is, right, like in Chuck Palahniuk's book and in the subsequent film, right? It's referencing all of the dirty things that have to happen to make soap.
Right.
And how that compares to our modern society, which looks very sanitized in many ways, but is ignoring all of the dirty things that have to happen to give you that sanitized experience. I really love that book. I really hate that a lot of people's takeaway was like violence is cool, and it's like you have missed the point entirely.
Right. Yeah.
And I really love that movie as well.
One of the things that I noticed while doing this research is that a whole bunch of articles about soap were written in 2020 because of COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion of where soap came from. This is one of the things that I have found weird about the beginning of COVID, is that it feels like, to a segment of people, the idea that you should wash your hands for 30 seconds was new information.
Yeah.
And stretching back to that job that I had where we sold cleaning and sanitation products to restaurants and grocery stores, like I had been washing my hands. I had always been washing my hands regularly, but specifically washing my hands for 30 seconds with a little thing playing in my brain to make sure that I washed it for long enough. Like that goes back to doing that job more than 20 years ago. And so the seemingly surprise information that it seemed like about, yes, you should wash your hands and you should use soap. I was like, okay, we should have all been doing this already, all of the time. And another thing that happened around that time was that there was kind of a little bit of freak out about whether it was okay to use the Dove Beauty Bar, marketed as 1/4 moisturizing cream, to wash your hands during the time of COVID.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually soap. The answer, yes, it's fine. It's fine to do that. It's not technically soap. It does include surfactants, and the surfactants are the important part to cleaning your hands sufficiently by washing them.
Yeah.
As every time I came across another article that I was like, oh, and this is also from 2020 when everyone was thinking about soap. I'm still thinking about soap. Still washing my hands.
I mean, listen, take away all of the cleanliness specific needs.
Uh-huh.
Not entirely, but like, I'm always thinking about soap because it smells good. I'm a sucker, man. Put pumpkin scent in a soap, I'm buying it.
Yeah.
This is the first year that I've seen, and I know there are people that are going to groan at what I'm about to say. And yes, I am the most basic woman alive. But this year, for the first time, I found pumpkin scented laundry detergent. I bought like a case of it. I love that business. I want pumpkin everything. So, and I want it year round. So yeah, I'm all about that. Every marketer that makes frou-frou redonkadoodle soap that smells like
Uh-huh.
cake, candy, and pumpkins, they're like,
Yeah.
what's Holly Fry's email address? We're a little short this quarter. We gotta just
Send them directly to Holly.
shoot some marketing her way because we know this will pan out.
Yeah. 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 The fragrances are also like almost a whole separate history from
Yes.
the soap. And something that I did not get into here. I read an article that was not exactly like debunking the whole thing about using ash on wool and it would combine with lanolin to make soap.
Oh, right.
It didn't feel like it had been written specifically to debunk that idea. It was more like, here is an experimental approach to this historical fact of how people might have discovered soap. And this experiment was like, yeah, this with the wool and the lanolin, that did not actually make soap. But one thing that they found that did make soap was cleaning the like cheesecloth type of cloths that would have been used in perfume making, where the perfume making would have involved like an oil and the fragrance and then repeatedly cycling through the oil and the fragrance to like make the perfume that would stick on your body. And then you would have these cloths left over and you would need to wash the cloths and they would be embedded at that point with like fats that had been used in the perfume making process. And that really did yield more soap, but is not what was mentioned in those Sumerian tablets. I found that very interesting. I also found it very interesting about how some of the marketing of soap as soap became like a real commercial industrial product invented some concepts related to things like body odor as a product that needed to, or as an issue that needed to be resolved through the use of soap. And it reminded me a little bit of the coining of the term halitosis to sell mouthwash. Yeah.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Because those things existed.
Yeah, sure,
right?
sure.
Bad breath and body odor did exist.
Yes.
So there is like a fine line of we've solved this problem versus any amount of this makes you wrong.
Sure.
Right? And did you find in any of your research like that tipping point where it started to be like nothing that tips off the robots that you're human should be allowed?
I found kind of oblique references to that and to like the differing standards around the world.
Right.
Like when I was in college, I had a girlfriend who spent a summer or a year abroad in France. And when she got back, she was like, I am so mad that now I have to spend all this time every single day showering and washing my hair. Because while I was in France, it was socially acceptable to like have a couple of days pass. Like I still felt like I was okay to be out in public if it had been a day or two since taking a shower.
Right.
But here in the US, it has to be every day. And it has to be like the amount of time it's taking me to wash my hair every day really sucks. And I'm mad that this is like what I have to spend my time on. And I have no concept of like whether she felt like she had a perceptible difference in her level of hygiene with an American versus a French standard. But she definitely felt like in the United States, if she wasn't going out and like if she wasn't showering before going out, that she was doing something wrong. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably anthropological and sociological study onto those questions.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure
like
of it.
more specifically, how those standards are determined and then socially maintained.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super fascinating. I mean, there are also just, like the other element of it is that there are also just personal preferences within that spectrum, right? Of, like,
Yeah, yeah.
I do not like when my hair is not freshly washed.
Me
But
too.
I know a lot of people who actually think their hair looks better on, like, the 2nd or 3rd day,
Yeah, yeah,
and they don't wash even every time they shower, which is totally fine, but, like,
yeah,
everybody has, like, a different
yeah,
space in there where they feel comfortable, so it becomes a weird
yeah.
the sort of, like, homogenization of, like, ultimate cleanliness as the goal
Oh, sure.
is always a little bit silly and weird to me.
Sometimes an algorithm will take me onto I will, like, wind up in curly hair maintenance videos,
Oh, I get so many of
um,
those.
which is, like, a very different kind of care than my hair, which is very straight and less now that I'm older, but from my teens through age 40 was also very oily, and if I did not wash it every day, it felt gross. And while, like, natural skin and body care companies would be like, "If you're doing it every day, you're stripping the oils, and if you just stop, then it will regulate itself." I did not find that to be true ever. But, like, a lot of people whose hair is really curly or people of different races and ethnicities,
Oh,
like,
for
a
sure, for
daily
sure.
shampooing, 100% bad idea.
Yeah.
I would wager that the couple of books that are more focused on cleanliness than on soap, which came up in my research, but I did not get. I did not try to check them out or anything because I thought that they would probably just take me down rabbit holes that were not going to help.
Yeah.
Probably have a lot more of stuff about that, like when, like how cultures develop their idea of what clean is and how often showering needs to happen to be considered clean.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there are cats that don't bathe at all. It's fine. They're fine.
They bathe with their mouths.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, we're in prime soap season, so I'm excited right now anyway.
Yeah.
Getting all the hand soaps, stocking up for the year. I have a,
Yeah.
personal every day is Halloween soap rule. So
Uh-huh.
there are always things that smell like autumnal stuff for the most part, with occasional
Yeah.
bubble gums and roses thrown in.
Yeah.
I am that person that has a stockpile of every scent you could possibly wish for.
Yeah.
It's a storage problem. It's not a problem in my heart, just a problem of space.
Right. There are definitely, like, a number of soaps and lotions and things that smell particularly good to me that I especially like using, and they make me feel a little happier. There have been times that I have, like, been on a vacation and whatever product line was being used in the hotel or, like, the
Mhm.
spa, if I had a spa visit, has just made me feel so happy that I've been like, "I'm buying that and taking it home with me."
Yeah, all the time.
So, yeah. Yeah. Currently, I have a lotion that I'm using that is came directly it's a vacation lotion that is making my lotioning process happens like a little luxury every single day.
Vacation lotion. Oh.
We talked about William Firth Wells and Mildred Weeks Wells, inspired by an episode of 99% Invisible that made me real mad. I re-listened to our Max von Pettenkofer episode, which is one of the things that was discussed in that 99% Invisible episode. They were sort of focused on how Max von Pettenkofer was one of the last people to, like, really hype up the idea that miasmas were spreading disease when the rest of the scientific and medical community was almost entirely at that point accepting the germ theory of disease, and how he was wrong about a lot of stuff, but he was right about some things. Like, he was right about indoor ventilation being really important to help reduce the spread of indoor diseases. And so it was very funny to me when I listened to this episode of 99% Invisible and got progressively more frustrated. And then I re-listened to that episode and was like, oh, I didn't find this frustrating at all when we recorded it, which I think was in early 2020, if I'm remembering correctly, because the following 5 years had not happened yet.
Right.
But one of the things that I have found frustrating over the last 5 years is that the COVID pandemic made it so crystal clear that illnesses that spread through the respiratory system can be spread very easily in indoor environments with bad ventilation, especially if they are crowded. And even back in the 2020 into 2021 time period, I was like, man, we just sort of accepted the fact that if you go to a con, you're probably going to come home with con crud. We could have been living in a world where there was enough ventilation and enough indoor air sanitation that maybe that would not have just been viewed as the probable, inevitable likelihood of going to a convention. And this is the same kind of stuff that Mildred and Richard were talking about 100 years ago.
I feel you.
Uh-huh.
But the way I con, that wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
I think if you're a person that goes to panels and maybe does other stuff, but if you're going somewhere like Dragon Con where it's huge drink ups, people, you know what I mean? I don't know that any amount of air fix-it can counter a bunch of drunk people singing in each other's faces. Is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
So I think some of that is situational.
For sure.
And I mean, some cons probably have a different vibe than that. But I think so much of the con experience is about connecting with the people you don't get to see all the time.
Uh-huh.
And it does tend to devolve into a little bit of, nerdy gras bacchanalia that it may not have helped that much. If that may or may not make you feel any better about it. It still sucks nobody was doing it, but
yeah.
I feel we would have all had to do Dexter's Lab style personal lamination to actually prevent con crud.
Well, and I'm not saying it would have possibly eliminated con crud entirely, but reduced it. Fewer illnesses. And then I also sort of thought about their work with measles, which, was then not that long after. I don't remember the exact timeline, even though we've done an episode on measles. Measles became preventable through a vaccine. But at the time that they were doing this work, it was not. And so it was seen as inevitable that children would get measles at some point during their childhood, most likely. And if not, they would get measles at some point eventually. And so it just sort of was accepted as inevitable that kids going to school would get measles. And their work seemed promising, at least as far as slowing down the spread of a measles outbreak so it wasn't a sudden, intense crisis. Could that have been built on to more stop the spread of measles instead of slowing it down? Maybe. Things that are not quite as aggressively contagious as measles, because measles is incredibly contagious. It's one of the most contagious illnesses that we know about. Could that have dropped way down the amount of disease risk? I also have frustrations in part because in the last 3 years or so, I think the 5-ish respiratory illnesses that I have gotten, 3 were contracted almost certainly at the doctor or dentist office.
Yeah.
And where, I was not having face-to-face contact with anyone other than the doctor or the dental hygienist, but was in a facility where the air had been breathed into by lots of other people for a
Yeah.
very long time, which is the kind of stuff that their research seemed the most likely of, like, slowing down.
Yeah.
And then I also just have the general question of, like, if we had been living in a world where there was already a focus, like a very strong focus on indoor ventilation and indoor air sanitation, if that would have meant less transmission of COVID, less need for as many long-term interventions against COVID, and if that might have meant less of a backlash to the idea of public health than what we are living through in this moment. Who knows? That's all very speculative.
Yeah. This is unfortunately Milan Kundera's unbearable lightness of being, right? You can only have one life experience, and you
Sure,
can't know what the other possibilities would have been.
it is a good point. It's also normal to kind of wonder about this stuff and speculate.
Oh, of course. Of course.
So yeah, I am also interested and glad to know that that Mildred Weeks Wells was like working at the capacity that she was working at during the time that she was, even though she was paid way less or not paid at all, because we don't hear nearly as much about women doing that kind of work during that period.
For sure. Do you, like me, wanna know all of the dirt on what happened with their marriage?
I want so much more personal information about each of them. That's why I said at the top of the episode that I have not read this book, Airborne by Carl Zimmer. I did get it. I got it the last thing in research. Like, I had already read all of these other papers and all of these other articles. I had gotten William's entire book. Like, I had done all of this stuff. And I was like, man, not only do I have almost no biographical information about either of them, some of the information that I do have, I am confused by. Like, I was, for example, very confused by what was going on with Mildred's father's embezzlement thing.
Right.
And I was having a really hard time finding any reporting about it. So I finally got this book to, like, just sort of try to confirm details about the two of them, which is one portion of that book. The biggest thing that helped me there was learning that the reporting around her father's accusations and trial and all of that had been reported with his first and middle initial and not his whole first name, which that finally led me to newspaper articles that I could read about it. Whereas before that, I was finding basically nothing. And I was
Right.
like, what is this financial mismanagement thing in Texas that I can't seem to find anything about?
That seems to be a big secret.
Yeah. And like all of the brief write ups of her grandfather are almost glowing in how they talk about him. And I was like, but it seems like there was an embezzlement thing. Like, what? Having a really hard time. So,
Wild.
yeah, the fact that so much of that is just like a total mystery. I wish we knew more. And I definitely wish we knew more about some of the more gossipy stuff, like what specifically happened in their marriage. Was it really that the two of them were just difficult to work with that led to their losing their jobs? Like,
Yeah. I also, it seems like you did this research, so you might have insight that I wouldn't. But as we get to the end of their story where they just kind of like are working on their own things, I'm like, is this one of those instances where they were living at a time where it was a little more stigmatized to get divorced? And so they
probably.
essentially were separated in
Yeah.
behavior, but maybe not in declaration.
Yeah. They were still legally married until the end of their lives, as far as
Yeah.
I know.
But just not, they
Mildred-
didn't seem to be living a life together at all.
No, Mildred did move to another city with Bud. And even then, it still seems like he was spending some of his time with them, but not like living with them full time.
Right.
I'm imagining to like maintain a relationship with his son in some way could be a reason for that. But yeah, it seems like for all practical purposes, they were not married, even though they were legally still married. And they were definitely not really research partners anymore in the last few years of their career after approximately 1944.
And then I think about married couples who work together
Oh, yeah.
and how often that creates really toxic situations.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, yeah, I could maybe see where people would want to hear. I
Yeah.
used to work for a married couple, and it was a nightmare because I realized that they would argue through their employees,
Right.
and like it just created havoc, and it
Yeah.
sucked. And I know people do it.
Yeah. Well, and so many companies today have rules about, like, if married couples are both employed here, they cannot work in the same department. They cannot,
Right.
they especially one of them cannot supervise the other one.
Yeah.
And then in academia, there's this whole idea of, like, the quote trailing spouse, where, like, one spouse is the spouse that the college or university wants to hire, but they are married and they can only afford to move if the spouse can also find work. And, like, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But the two of them were like, they were in a situation where they were both working in the same department. I don't think he was technically her supervisor, but, like,
Yeah.
they were working together on all of these things together, and he was paid more than she was, if she was paid at all.
Yeah.
And that does seem just like a dynamic that would be difficult
Yeah.
to deal with.
I feel compelled to say I have worked with other married couples that were amazing
Sure.
and did not have toxic garbage. In fact,
Yeah.
one married couple that I started working at this company, and I didn't know they were married for a long time because they were so hyper professional about, like, not in any way being in each other's business at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I wonder all of the secret
I do too.
meanderings of the Welses.
I also wonder about their son, because, like, everything that was written about him was pretty general, and also some of the ways that people described him contradicted each other. Like, there was one paper, the paper that was sort of about the tuberculosis experiments that was written after his death, used a word that we do not use today to describe him as intellectually disabled.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a doctor who examined him when he was being institutionalized that was like, I don't think he has an intellectual disability based on his vocabulary and, like, what we can tell about his
Ooh.
cognition. And his assessment was that it was a mental illness that involved psychosis and was possibly schizophrenia. Incredibly different from how another account had described him. So I don't really know.
I think that's a good example of why it is important that there has been, and it's changing now, and I hope it continues to, like, that thing where people are reticent when it comes to speaking about any such things. And as a
Yeah.
consequence, there is a big gap in understanding.
Yeah.
So people's situations get described incorrectly all the time.
Right.
And I think it's getting better, but that is a problem, right? Like,
yeah.
I understand for some people it is uncomfortable, or they don't want to discuss such things, or they're worried they will say the wrong thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's tricky, and
Yeah.
we need more information, not less.
Correct.
Not necessarily about any one given person, but about the possible various things that a person can be and have and do.
Yeah. I agree.
Anyway, that's my nerdy hippie moment today.
I love nerdy hippie moments. Whatever's happening on your weekends, I hope it is as lovely as it possibly can be. We will be back with a Saturday classic tomorrow. We will have something brand new on Monday. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.